Okay, today we're going to review not only what we've done so far, but the last step before we align the body. So last time we talked about assembling the B-pillar brace. That's this big brace. It has the holes on the top on the Mark IV. You're going to rivet all along the outside after putting a couple of pilot rivets in like we did last time. This time we finished off a few of the rivets. This one's ready to go. We assembled the entire 3 pieces of the bed. So the left-hand side, the right-hand side, and the front wall. We drilled all the holes last time. Now we actually bolted it together loosely. This thing still moves, it still wiggles, so there's nothing riveted to the car yet. It's just in place and ready to be riveted. And at this point, this is the key. We have everything prepared to be riveted to the car. So we're going to rivet along the flange. We're going to do all that next time. But for right now, to guarantee that everything is square, we're going to take a look at the tailgate. There's another video that describes how the tailgate latches and hinges assemble. Very straightforward. The latch striker is up here. You assemble your tailgate. You have hinges at the bottom here with little plastic inserts. Very straightforward Ranger Splash tailgate. So the key to our build right now, remember all this stuff is loose still, right? Everything's hand tightened with the exception of these 2 bars. We tightened these 2 bars down so that the width left to right is fixed. So now I'm just gently closing this. There's no latch on here, so we're just closing it for clearance. The key to this build is to make sure this gap right here is the same top to bottom. So down here, the gap is fixed. You've got a bar holding this together very tightly. You've got your latches and spring, or your hinges at the bottom with their little plastic inserts held pretty tight here, so the actual gate doesn't move much at the bottom. At the very top, this is going to flex in and out. So what we want to do is we want to make sure this 1/4-inch gap, and if you're looking straight from the rear, the very edge of the gate to the inside edge of the aluminum is about 1/4 of an inch. And it's determined, like I said, by this bar down here. So you can't really adjust that other than wider by putting washers on, which we don't do. So at the very top here, I used to say, you know, make a wood brace that holds this left to right and keeps it consistent. You know, of late, take a piece of duct tape or strong tape and just put it over the top here, and then pull your gap. And I'm just measuring this gap eyeball to eyeball. Or eyeballing it is really just as accurate at this stage. And then just pull it in, and I'm going to just give this a little tug. Didn't need much. And I'm just going to leave that so that this gap here matches this gap here. And I'll do the same on this side. This side's a little wider, so we'll have to probably pull it in a little tighter. So I'll put the tape on there. I'll pull that in right about even. Now, once these 2 pieces are in place, and this is holding the gap consistent, once they're in place, now we know we've got something we can begin to tighten down. So start up at the front. Start tightening all of your little bolts up here. Remember, this is all flexible still. Start tightening your bolts at the very top. Start looking at the rear and do 1 rivet at a time. So I'm going to put a couple of rivets in this next stage. I'm not going to go through all the riveting with you on video. But along the flanges, I'm going to put 1 rivet over there. I'm going to put 1 over here. I'll come up front. I'll put 1 right at the top here over the wheel well. I'll put 1 over the wheel well. And then I'm going to double check this gap. So throughout your riveting process, go back to the rear and just make sure that your gap is good. Everything else can be adjusted. When that inner fender gets riveted to this inner wall, there's yet another chance to adjust and strengthen the bed sides. So at this stage, we're going to tighten all these bolts. The only piece we're leaving out is the front tray and that 1 bar behind the front tray. The reason for that is, in order to seal that leading edge of the wall where the water has to be kept out of the cabin, in order to seal that, we have to be able to reach into this little gasket or little crease where the aluminum joins the seat floor. So we'll leave the tray out for now. We'll tighten everything else down 1 bolt at a time, and we'll constantly check to make sure we're square at the tailgate. And that's it. The next stage after this is to just verify that we have all of our rivets in place. We like how strong everything is. We are going to seal off the bottom edge of this plate, and then we're going to put the front tray in and put those 6 or 7 bolts in and wrap it up. Okay, we've already positioned the rear tailgate in a rough manner, but we have everything square. And if you remember, we taped off the tailgate to make sure we had the right gap, top to bottom. we've got the crossbars installed, your two long crossbars and your one short crossbar in the back. Now we're a little tighter than hand tight here. So the front wall is pretty much in its position where it's going to stay. And that's important because we just put this bar in, and this is the bar that's immediately to the rear of the front tray. And the front tray is that tray that binds this whole floor pan together up front. The open end of this front crossbar should be facing to the rear. Later on, the inner fenders are going to be mounted to this wall, and the leading edge of the fender is going to slide on the other side of this bar. So you want the smooth face facing forward. So the trick here is, and you can do this at the end, but it's a lot harder. It's a lot easier to seal this seam right here with silicone. GE Silicone 2 is what we use. And the silicone, once you seal it, remember this wall is where it belongs. The rest of this can still move a little bit. I'm going to seal this leading edge. So from that far corner all the way along this edge, and once again this is the edge from the leading edge of the seat on the Jetta to the back edge of the aluminum front wall. So you're going to seal all the way along this edge after riveting tiny holes at the bottom. Now if you remember when we drilled these holes, we left at the very, very bottom about a quarter of an inch from the bottom of this front wall are those little pierces, and those pierces we use to rivet this front wall to the seat leading edge, and that's why this is already installed. So once those rivets are pulled tight, you take your sealant and you simply go across the top and goober it up. There's no reason to save on $5 sealant, right? Go across the top, go down as far as you can. You have open access from the top. So take the same sealant and go from the side. And I'm looking at it from the top. I can see where all the sealant is going. There's no tray here. Same thing on the other side. So once that's all goobered up, take a look at the very top edge of the seat. You'll see a bunch of open rectangles, circles. Fill each one of those with silicone. Just dab each one. The silicone will stay riding a little bit high off of the little opening, and you're good. So that seals off your entire top edge of a very difficult area to access if the tray is in place. Once it's done and all the silicone is in place and you're riveted, then you can take your front tray, and remember this is the front tray. This opening is for access to the fuel pump on the passenger side. You can see it right down there, that little tray. So this tray, you gently, remember everything's still pretty loose, so you can drop in the tray. And this tray mounts in front of that bar, and we use the rest of these bolts. See all the bolt holes that we drilled out in the first installment? These little bolt holes line up with the bolt holes that are already pierced on the front tray, and we can assemble this tray. So I won't bother you with the assembly of the tray itself. That's how the front tray is put together. All of your bars are relatively tight, but they can still move with a little rubber hammer. So if you had to move something, you can kind of tap it if you need to. So that gets you sealed off at the front edge, which is really the money side, right? If that's sealed, no water can get into the cabin. Okay, so I put a couple of the stainless steel bolts in place to hold it up high. Basically, you just want to make sure the button head side of the bolt faces forward when you're in the cabin, because that's the smooth end. If you have the nut sticking out, when you go to do the carpet on the inside, you'll have a big bump in the carpet. So the button head, the smooth button head, is on the inside here. Find your hole. Thank goodness for CNC pieces. So I haven't put the nuts on there. That gives us an idea of where it is positioned. I'll save my my last little bit here is about positioning the inner fender. So in order to go to the inner fender, two things have to happen. On the passenger side, you'll notice when you try to fit the inner fender, which is the big aluminum piece. This is the aluminum piece that we use for an inner fender. This edge is basically the bed floor edge. It's this edge that we're going to be doing next. So see this little tab that sticks down right here? That tab slides between the front tray and this bar. So you're going to slide the front tab in place. And what I wanted to tell you is on some cars, I haven't had to do it on all cars for whatever reason, you have to hammer in this little corner here, this sharp corner of the of the steel inner wheel well. I take a rubber hammer or a steel hammer and I just dent this in a little bit so you can fit this without touching. So the inner fender slides into the front. And this wire, I'm not all the way tightened yet on the front. So a great tool for a rubber hammer. What the heck was that? Oh. Cutting room floor. So the key when you're mounting the inner fender, the key is going to be to have a flush inner edge. So this edge here, if it's a little snug fit, that's okay. Remember, this is aluminum. You want to have things with a tight interference fit. If there ever is anything way too tight and something won't go in, just file off a little corner and it should slide right in. So front slides into the tab, the rear aligns with the little offset back here at the corner. So once this is in place, and once again, position these first. These are structural elements to the car. This inner fender, once riveted to the car, and remember, you're installing this inner fender after all of your rivets are in place for the bedside. Once this is in place, you can't reach the inside of the bedside to rivet. So you want to finish all of the riveting first, then install your inner aluminum fender at the very, very end. Once the aluminum fender is installed, it actually braces the entire side wall and gives you a very, very strong, permanent position for your side wall. So front tray, loosely positioned, you're already sealed. Once the front tray is in, go ahead and finish all of the little rivets for the bed sides. Then install your inner fenders toward the end of the process. And that's it. You've got a pretty, you repeat it on the other side. There's no interference on the driver's side. Keep all of your bars, everything laid out tight, but not all the way tight. You want all these nuts and bolts tightened enough where with a little tap of a hammer, you can move the bar a little bit to make sure these side pieces slide right in. And that's it.